So, yep, I'm Delbert, and I just wanna, run you through a quick history of, where I've been from and what my story so far is. Uh, I promise that's relevant to what I want to talk about. So, I'm originally from the Philippines, and as a Filipino, I am, blessed with singing, not singing music and all of those stereotypical things. But I've always been a fan of being creative. But I realized that that doesn't make much money, so I went to school studying business. That got me in P&G, wherein I was able to work on brands like Tide, Pantene, and interestingly enough, Duracell. So that was the first decade of my working career, and then I got married and joined the telecom startup Circle's Life. That's what Mark was sharing earlier. Lots of crazy things happened, and I was able to take it from zero revenue to a nine-figure annual revenue business. And at the end of that journey, I had a baby. So from there, I found Coffee Meets Bagel, and that's where we are now. So I want to talk a bit about Coffee Meets Bagel for those of you who are not aware. And thanks, Mark, for sharing a bit of history about CMB. So the key thing about Coffee Meets Bagel is we think everyone deserves a chance at love. And for us, we treat love very seriously. We we want to make sure that people end up with a high quality match that translates into a long-term relationship. So in a way, um, we're not very different from a matchmaker in that we want to make sure that you find someone that you stick with. In fact, like a common question that I get asked a lot is, um, how do you deal with the churn then? Because the better we are at matching people and that they end up with someone that they get married to or have a long-term relationship with, that's churn, and we can't monetize that. And for me, the simple answer there is, if we are in any shape or form helpful in helping them find love, they'll talk about it, and that will drive organic growth, and that will continue um, helping CMB in the long run. So that's how we think about it. So if you think about how the app is designed, um, it's there are a lot of commonalities with other brands, but the key thing here is we actually make sure that it's a lot more efficient and a lot more suited to our particular type of um, person. So we really cater to busy working professionals. So if you notice on the main profile, where in most dating apps now, the profile picture takes up the entirety of the screen. For us, it's just half, because actually for us, a lot of people or a lot of our users find that it's important to know, where their potential match works or what their industry is. Like, it's this kind of thing that you would want to know if you're really seriously wanting to know who this person is. So that's where we play, and I think it's an interesting kind of space, because if you think about this kind of positioning globally, it's not as crowded as you would imagine. The biggest players in the world, like Tinder, Bumble, they play in a more casual space. So that gives us a lot of room to continue growing. So what do I want to talk about? What did I mean by maturity and evolution? So I want to show this picture. So this is a picture of a wind tunnel, um, and I remember reading that after the invention of the wind tunnel, the designs of airplanes, cars started looking a lot alike. And the reason for that is now there was extremely scientific way of um, assessing if something is efficient at what it's supposed to do, optimizing to a particular outcome. And what happened after that is the all the other car manufacturers, all the other manufacturers wanted to achieve that same level of efficiency. So therefore, they all kind of converged to a similar kind of shape, similar kind of solution, and that's what the wind tunnel has done. And if you recall from my career history, I've worked in a lot of like almost like weirdly different kind of places. So if I talk about laundry, laundry had its own kind of convergence when it came to the categories evolution. For those of you who are old enough, before there were bars, that's how laundry was done, and then it became powder, and then liquid detergent, and then eventually now we have this thing called pods. And if you think about it from a from the point of a trajectory, all the other everyone is basically following the same path. Um, if you think about my other the other company I spent like more than a decade at, telecoms. You have 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G, and that has been the evolution there. Um, so, what does it look like for dating? And this is from my perspective. So, granted, I've only been in the dating industry for the last 6 months. So, this is my opinion, and I'd really love some questions and conversation about this. So, if I think about it at a super macro level, um, you started out with a traditional kind of meeting people through work, friends, matchmaking services, and then the web came along. That's where the first generation of online dating started with Match, eHarmony, OkCupid, and then eventually mobile came along. That's where Tinder really exploded in popularity, and in a way homogenized what um, a mobile dating app would look like for the years to come. And therefore, what's next, right? And what would that look like? So that is the big question that I think is super interesting to ponder. But going back to the to the topic, so what does this all mean? um if I think about all these like um trends and how everything eventually follows the same trajectory, all the brands, all the geographies follow the same trajectory. How does that actually translate into competitive advantage? And I think the key thing here is um, not every geography are at the same stage, um, but knowing what will happen next allows for competitive advantage. So if you think about like the simplest example here, and the one that I love to kind of share is with telecoms. Um, if you think about 5G and how it rolled out, not every country had 5G at the same time. Some countries had it earlier, some countries had it later. But knowing how 5G would have been rolled out in another country and using that as the blueprint for how it could be rolled out in your country would actually give you amazing insight in terms of how consumers would use it, how competition would sell it, and how you yourself can take advantage of it. And I think I see a similar thing when it comes to dating. So right now, um, the most mature market when it comes to dating, at least from a monetization point of view, is definitely the US. That's something we see. Europe follows closely, and I think Asia is still quite lagging. And a lot of it is driven by a strong sense of tradition. A lot of it is driven by um, a more cultural acceptance of traditional matchmaking services. So, but I think my hypothesis is it eventually will all converge. And how can we see that future and actually take advantage of it as it comes to fruition? So that's the question that's on my mind, and I think um, that that creates a huge advantage for anyone who would want to kind of use the lessons in a more mature market to take advantage of in a less mature market. So that's all I wanted to share, and I'm actually looking forward to what everyone thinks about this. So thoughts. I'm gonna hand it over to you, Mark, for the questions.
All right, there we go. Thank you. Right, Q&A time. So, folks, if you'd like to add some questions, your inquiries about Coffee Makes Bagel and marketing, CMB I regard as one of the hallmark brands in the dating industry. And you've been particularly strong, I must say, on ghosting and consumer behavior. So I'm wondering how you feel that dovetails into the brand, because you have been quite vocal. CMB's been quite vocal and innovative, really, in terms of being anti-ghosting, for example. So, I mean, initiatives like that. But could you talk to that and how you believe it impacts the branding?
Well, going back to who CMB is for, really, it's for serious professionals, busy professionals, people who are not thinking of using the dating app as a game or something to pass the time, but really looking for a serious partner. So when someone ghosts, right, it's all the more, I would say, uh, critical that we address it and that we take a strong stance, because it's a show to our users how seriously we take their time, and we want to make sure that we are efficient about it, um, and they don't spend so much time on the app. In fact, like, that's one thing that we intentionally design. In like, if you think about app design principles philosophy, there's this thing wherein, oh, they need to spend a lot of time on the app. A lot of innovation when it comes to product technologies has been about that. Like, say, the in-app browser, right? If you've read the news recently, how, oh, Facebook is actually tracking you when you browse other stuff through their in-app browser. That's all there to really make sure that you spend as much time within their app. But for us, we want to be efficient about it, because we know we're not the center of their life. We know that if we find someone for them, it's goodbye CMB. Like, it's a goodbye. That's why we have this noon alert, like, hey, we have some fresh profiles for you to view, and it's limited, and it's intentionally limited, because we don't want you to endlessly swipe. Like, you have better things to do. You were out there to conquer the world. So, going back to the ghosting thing, if someone ghosts, that's um, outside of it not being nice. It's just wastes people's time. So we want to make sure that we take a strong stance around that.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, it all impacts reputation at the end of the day, doesn't it? I mean, it's I think about my first experience of the dating industry was around a round tables socializing in Silicon Valley with my adventure club. And people talk about their favorite places to hang out. 95% of the people in my club were singles. Those 5% were couples, but we'd sit around a table socializing, and generally the conversation would shift towards what people are up to, and the single people would talk about where they're finding joy and people that they want to hang out with and date. And I think sometimes we miss out on those conversations, like how to get a window into those real conversations, because that really impacts how we drive branding, how we, drive the messaging. And CMB to me seems like a brand which is almost like it is all, Hinge has gone with this route of designed to be deleted. Would you agree that CMB is along the same lines in some ways? I feel that you have some significant respect from users because you've got the same sort of positioning as Hinge. Would you agree with that, or like how are you different from Hinge?
I would say we're closer to Hinge than we are to a Tinder. So if you think about, brands in the spectrum, we're closer to Hinge. But I think we take it a step further. The language that we use, the way we articulate the end outcome we want for our users. It's really about serious relationships, long-term relationships, having someone end up in marriage. That's really our end game. I think, and honestly, that puts off some other people, and that's fine. Like some people are not there to, find the one. That's totally cool. There's other services for that. So I think, to your question, we're a bit closer to Hinge, definitely, but I think we take it a step further.
I love what you just said about a good goodbye. Can you expand on that? How do you make it good for Coffee Meets Bagel?
So for one thing, when someone suspends their account, we have a survey like, why are you suspending? And one of those choices is because I met someone on CMB. And once we know that, we make sure that we stay in touch. We ask them, hey, if there's any kind of milestones like an engagement or anything, let us know. So to this day, we get a lot of these kind of inbounds. In fact, one of the founders, Arum, she just officiated a wedding because we got an email from someone who said like, "Oh, I love Coffee Meets Bagel so much. That's how I met the love of my life," and she requested that, and we were totally game for it. Like, yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, it was also convenient because like it was like very close to where Arum lived, but yeah, we were like, yeah, it's like totally down for that. I think it's an important kind of thing to do for a brand to really have this relationship with their customers, and even and in this case their ex-customer, right? Because it it emphasizes like how serious we are with our stand, right?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Great. I've got a question. Let me bring this question onto the stage. This is from Io, from True Flutter. With so many different consumer profiles, how have you done marketing to attract the serious professional searching for committed relationships and dissuading those looking for something more casual? So how do you make sure your flag is firmly planted in the serious side of the house?
So this is a really interesting question. I think the simplest, most straightforward answer to this is because CMB, like a lot of dating apps, it's essentially a community, and the community takes the shape of what seeds it, what precedes it, right? So if you start with a particular kind of cohort, there's a high likelihood that you will continue to grow along that trajectory with that kind of cohort. So what does that mean? If you think about the history of CMB, right, with uh, the founders, one went to Stanford, the other went to Harvard, and like high flying careers. So where it started was actually like the seed population or their seed community was also within the same kind of networks, and that allows the organic growth to replicate along that same trajectory. Now, the second part to it is how do you sustain that? How do you continue doing that? Um, and that comes in a couple of parts. One is continuing to be consistent, like acknowledging that that's what you are, and then don't do something else. Don't portray yourself to be something else. For instance, one of the famous growth stories that you would have read about with Tinder has been frat parties and all of those things. That's definitely something that CMB should not do, because then that goes against the initial community that you built, right? So instead, do things which are more aligned to that. Like an example of that is, if you think about today, where do you have a high concentration of these kind of professionals, these kind of people? Be there. And for us, that's a WeWork or a co-working space. So how do you do something with them so that you create a brand moment, a brand touch point in these spaces? And that's precisely what we've done in some countries where we work. And the CMB has like a relationship wherein we do something very simple. We serve bagels and coffee for breakfast for WeWork members, and then that's a um, very soft selly, extremely soft selly way of just showing up in someone's life as a brand, and that is consistent to the people that we want to be on CMB.
Gotcha. Thank you. I've got another question for you from Bruno. Great question. Bruno asks, so Bruno's with Forces Pen Pals, CEO. What have you learned from marketing in the dating industry? I was thinking the opposite, actually. What have you learned from Procter & Gamble and brought in to the industry? But he's asking the antithesis of this. What have you learned from marketing the dating industry that you would now take back to the industry you previously worked in? So Procter & Gamble. What could Procter & Gamble learn from us? And from your
Um, so the last 6 months have been an amazing kind of journey for me. I've learned so many things. I think I would say about half of it is not necessarily linked to dating, which I'd love to talk to as well. Because if it's like, if let's say tomorrow for whatever reason I find myself in another kind of job, I would take a lot of the things that I've learned definitely in CMB. So let's start with the dating stuff. I think one thing that really attracted me to this space was the nature or the network effects that's inherent in dating, or at least in dating apps. It is essentially a social network if you have. So when someone is on a dating app and another person joins the dating app, the person that preceded that person will have a better experience. That's the power of network effects. Now, the flip side of network effects would be like in a telco. If I get another new user, that's another new user who's going to use up the bandwidth. So that's a negative of a network effects. Now, obviously, no telco wants to talk about that, but but it's something that I found super interesting in the dating world. And um, for me, like the big learning there is the power of influencers and how that actually drives our organic growth engine. So, um, given that CMB is not as big as the gigantic players, we have to be a lot smarter with how we drive growth. We have to make um, sharper choices. So we can't spend everywhere. We can't do everything everywhere. However, the power of the brand story, the power of the product actually drives um, huge spikes of growth from time to time, and that's amazing to see. So I'll give a few examples. I think a couple weeks back on TikTok, there was a creator in the US who um, not in any way affiliated with us, just decided to talk about the Shark Tank episode, which featured the CMB
Mhm.
founders.
Yeah.
Now, that TikTok went viral. I think it got like in the tens of millions of views. And we directly benefited from that because we see like suddenly, hey, like there's a spike of growth happening in this part of the world. What's going on? And then we are able to triangulate and conclude that it's because of that. A similar thing happened in Indonesia, wherein there was an influencer who signed up for CMB, and no joke, within 2 weeks, she suspended her account because she found someone, and she was so happy. She created a couple of stories talking about how to use CMB, and not just how to use, how to subscribe for premium and why that's important. And
Great.
you see like an insane level of spikes there. So what's the learning there? The learning there is the magnitude in which the right messenger with the right message can drive your growth. And the way we're weaponizing that, or we're really leveraging that, is then it's all about that. Like, it's about finding these right partners, if you will, to drive our next stage of growth. So that's something super duper interesting that I'll definitely take on to my next industry. The other thing that's not necessarily dating related is CMB is a super lean company. So for context, when I was in Circle's Life, I was leading a team of more than 40 people across different countries. In CMB, there's 6 people, including me. There's, and we're split. Like, half of them are in the US, half here in Asia. And we basically cover everywhere CMB is present. So
In the
we have to
marketing
be
department,
yeah, from
six.
a marketing perspective. So
Okay,
we
right,
have to be
gotcha.
super smart with how we do things. We can't do things everywhere
Yeah.
all at once. We have to make sure we're betting on the biggest things. We're we make sure that we leverage other people as much as we can, so that we're able to make maximum impact. So a simple example of leveraging other people, that WeWork example I mentioned, it's an arrangement I have with WeWork, wherein we discuss at a high level, but the execution is all on them and their partners. I don't have a single person on my team working actively on it, anything logistics related. So it's working through them. And that's what we do with other partners as well, who we work with. So we recently did the partnership with the fintech brand in Asia, wherein it was a press partnership. I don't have press people in Singapore or anywhere in the world. That's where they come in, and that's where it becomes a win-win kind of arrangement. So we realize how we can work way smarter with how we do things, and that's going to be relevant regardless of any industry.
So you mentioned influencers. I mean, traditionally, the dating industry is marketed through Google, pay-per-click,
Mm.
and the platforms. The main platforms that were on Android and iOS, and Facebook and Insta. And it seems like none of them are that friendly to us. We could do that. It would be nice to feel a bit more love from them. It's very difficult for startups to find joy. Actually, even all these platforms are somewhat challenging. So I look towards influencer marketing as a place that is also challenging in its own ways. Um, and as you're rolling out influencer marketing for CMB, that impacts us all, because you're finding influencers that can talk positively about their experience on CMB, but also that impacts us all, the rest of the dating industry. So I'm wondering what advice you have. First of all, are you very bullish about influencer marketing, and what channels, YouTube or TikTok? I mean, are these the primaries these days? You're hitting the younger demo and the older demo, perhaps on YouTube. Super short form, long form. The future is obviously TikTok. Um, what else would you recommend your audience today look at for the good of the industry, for the good of their brands?
So what I'm super bullish about is how marketing as we know it, as we've grown up to learn it, is definitely going to change. It's really not going to be about brands anymore in the future. I think this is a bold thing to say, especially coming from me, like a P&Ger. I think it's going to be about creators, influencers in the future. Like, that's how bullish I am. And to emphasize the point, and I am speaking for myself, whether here or any other place, I don't think I can really justify to myself anymore creating a full-on brand production campaign kind of thing anymore, because I don't think that's how you build the next generation of brands in this day and age. Now, specifically, platforms, right? I think for us, the main thing that we do, actually, just touching on back to CMB, just kind of sharing a bit about how we do our marketing, what's our media mix. So we think about two kinds of media in general. Like, we bucket all the channels into two buckets. So the first one is intent based. These are channels wherein people have a certain intent of using your app. And then there's the non-intent base, wherein you're reaching people who might not necessarily at that moment have intent to use your service. So intent would cover all your Google search, Apple search ads, all of those things. Because when they're searching CMB or dating app on Google or the App Store, they're showing some signal of intent. And therefore, if you're there, and that's why, numerically, if you look at the numbers, if you're a very, quant person, then you just look at it, you see how efficient it is. Like, oh my God, like I'm seeing all these like very high conversion rates, very low acquisition cost, all of those things, and looks really, really great. But the problem with that is that's not scalable. You're playing within the finite universe. There's only a finite universe of people every day, every month, who are searching for those things. You can't spend all your money there and expect that you will get the same rate of growth day in, day out. That's where non-intent based channels come in, and that's where a lot of Facebook inventory, programmatic display media comes in, and that's the dangerous part, because it's very, very easy to spend a lot of money there and not get a lot of result. So that's the part wherein it's you have to be just a lot more careful and be more intentional. But for us, where we see this space and where I've seen this space frankly evolve in the last 5 years, is how um, today's platforms, and TikTok is leading a lot of it, but there are other platforms as well, has actually created a much more sophisticated and a mature monetization platform for creators. And actually, then that's a game changer. In the past, just imagine like 5 years ago, if you wanted to work with an influencer, it was like you had to come up with an agreement, you had to document like there's a lot of these things that it was very manual way of doing it. But now it's actually in a lot of platforms, it's built in. So for instance, TikTok has what they call spark ads. So if like let's say Mark, let's say you create a TikTok and say, CMB is amazing. Okay? Let's say you make a TikTok, and what CMB can do is via TikTok's platform, I can actually boost your content, so your content reaches more people, but then your content now directs to a particular event that I want, like let's say an app download. So I'm using now your content very seamlessly within the platform, and you are able to monetize that content as an individual creator. And think of that happening at such a exponential degree with all the creators in the world. You don't need to be a mega Kardashian to earn money anymore. You don't need to like, even with like a YouTube's monetization, you need to have X thousand of subscribers before you're able to get that into that monetization game. But now TikTok and a lot of these other platforms have actually democratized it. They've made it so easy for anyone with a half decent camera to create their own content and actually monetize. And then so people then come in, and then that creates more content. Um, and then that creates a lot of ways for brands to take advantage.
So it sounds like you're actually doing advocacy influencer marketing in terms, because you're looking for these occasions when it sounds like boosting almost is the ideal scenario.
Essentially boosting, but it is
Yeah.
within the platform and it is seamless.
And that's really what the long-term future of advertising should be on social media, because who wants to be sold to? Everybody wants to buy. And social media has a responsibility to help bottle the friendly referral. I mean, if that exists in a natural state, then they should help us recognize it and bubble that up.
Yeah. And it creates the opportunity for interesting storylines. Like there was a TikTok creator who reached out to us a couple of months back. He's a divorce lawyer.
Yeah.
So that's his angle. His angle wasn't like, oh, I met the love of my life on CMB and here's my amazing story. His angle is like, hey, I'm a divorce lawyer. I've met so many unsuccessful couples.
Yes.
So it's an interesting hook, right? So
Yeah.
the possibilities for creativity here are endless. And the exciting thing is it's very easy to onboard, experiment, test, offboard, do more, double down, all of these things. Way more than before. So we don't actually spend a single dollar on any self-produced ads. None of my team is making self-produced ads. We
Great.
just
Why
work.
would you in this day and age? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, creators do so. You know what so we've just Cortland Brooks has just gotten into influencer marketing. Let me just turn that off. Sorry. Cortland Brooks has just got into influencer marketing, and it's amazing what people come up with. It's completely off the wall. There was one influencer we had, and she came up with the idea, and we didn't like the idea, and actually we almost pulled the plug on it. The influencer came up with. She's in Singapore, and she's on the phone to her boyfriend, and she basically tells him she's dumping him.
Wow.
Right? And then she says, no, just kidding. And then he comes back and said, well, that sucks so badly, I'm going to dump you. And it turns out he was kidding as well. So we had this diatribe between the two of them, like dumping each other. And then on came the dating brand. It's like, we would never have thought of that. We didn't really like it. It was completely away from anything that we would prescribe. But we wanted to give the influencer free realm to be creative. It's like, yeah, so that's kind of, they definitely push realms, don't they? I was like the divorce lawyer. Would you think of that and hunt for that person? No, but it's almost like marketing coming back at you, and then you kind of
Yeah,
select the
exactly.
influencer, and it's
And
quite
I think
exciting.
the
Yeah.
the flywheel I hope to trigger here is as we support more creators, then more creators come to us, then more creators create content for us. Then yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy. Especially when they see that you're receptive and you've got a brand that they can sincerely love. I think that's where it really starts, as the advocacy. The genuine advocacy from influencers is something that can't be bought.
Yeah.
So yeah, and you've got a brand that I think there's a few brands in our industry that are nothing but well respected, and you've got one there. So I've got a question from Guillaume, and then we should probably wrap up. I've run over a bit, but it's been absolutely fascinating. So let me just run this question from Guillaume from Cedars. Don't all creators want to build their brand, or do they just try and build an audience?
So I can't speak for all creators. I think you can segment them in terms of the mega ones to the big ones to the small ones, micro ones, nano ones. I think so first of all, we don't work with the really 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 big ones. I think that that exceeds our budget. So we work with more of the people who are just getting into being a creator. They've probably been doing it for a couple of years, and this kind of profile of creator is actually really interesting because one, they're gonna be a lot more um, practical, hustling at the way that they'll do it. At the second, and secondly, what they want is simple. They want another revenue stream. They want to make money. Like they don't think about, hey, I want to be the next, Kim Kardashian. No, they're not thinking about that. They're thinking, hey, you know what? Like this is a fun thing, and I can make some money on the side. That's what they're thinking about. Um, and that simplifies the arrangement. I feel, um, because I'm clear, you're clear, we good. We do great things together.
So I find the best influences, the most effective ones, are ones that are coming from an absolute authenticity. Like recently, I discovered Lex Friedman, and this guy, I mean, he's done incredibly well with podcasting, and as a couple of million people on YouTube, and he just is genuinely curious, and it comes across. He's got a very flat style. It's very
Yeah.
monotone almost. Very strange egg. He's an AI researcher. Um, but he's just really good at interviewing, and I can't get enough of him. And it's just it's the absolute authenticity and quirkiness. It seems like a lot of these influencers they're genuine through quirkiness.
And Mark, what's so why the other reason why I'm so bullish about influencers creators is you've if you've been paying any kind of attention when it comes to marketing technology in the last couple of years, the big thing everyone is worried about is the science behind it, attribution,
Hmm.
now like advertising, privacy, blah 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 blah. How can we target? How can we know who we're after? All of those things, right? Well, guess what? The thing that's always gonna be there, the thing that's always gonna give you a reliable, consistent audience to target is through creatives, through
Hmm.
creators. Like this creator that you're talking about, Mark, I'm sure his audience are people who are similar to you. There's a certain profile, right? There are creators that I follow that I don't think other people, like even my friends, would follow. But it's speaking to me, and I
Hmm.
think that's the power, right? Like you have a consistent ability to target, to micro target in a way that is authentic and that's defensible from policy changes, technology. So I think that's the other reason.